Okay. Uh, so the Global Appraisal of Individual Needs, or the GAIN, it's really a family of instruments that's used with adolescents, young adults, and adults. Um, so far, there's over 1.1 million GAIN records in our database, the database that you're going to be using, the software. So it's been widely used for decades. And a lot of that data is used for aggregate level things. It's used for research, high level things all the way down to, of course, individual client level treatment planning, service planning, and everything in between. So as was mentioned, it's all about gathering consistent data and doing so in a way that you can use it for not even low-level things or with clients and high-level things. The GAIN instruments are used in a variety of diverse settings. So substance use, justice, school-based service settings, child welfare, employee assistance, kind of across the board. We at the GAIN Coordinating Center, our mission has always been to improve assessment to facilitate evidence-based practices, right? So if you do the assessment in an evidence-based way or using an evidence-based assessment, that really supports the treatment, right? You understand what's going on with the client, you understand what they need by using an evidence-based assessment. And how we do that is we offer licensing, training, software, data cleaning, reporting, evaluation reports we can create for programs, and we help with implementation and technical support, So a lot of my job is doing training and doing implementation and technical support, So as we've been getting this rolling, I'm the contact person, so I try to get everybody on board, and then I'll keep doing that as we go on throughout and just be your contact person day to day through implementation and sustainability. So that's what kind of me and my team do. So we have a whole team that do that. And so we're just trying to support everyone to use the tools and use them in the most beneficial way for their program and purposes. So the GAIN family of instruments is all the way down from a 5 to 10 minute GAIN SS or short screener. That's used for general populations like haven't been identified at all. They're not involved in any system or anything. You can use that with any person anywhere to determine who needs a longer assessment or who needs a referral for a brief intervention. Then up to the quick that you're going to be using, which is what we call an expanded screener. It covers more life areas, and really for those who have already involved in some type of system or involved in some way, Up to the GAIN Q4, which is a quick biopsychosocial assessment with a level of care. The distinction there is that the Q4 provides a diagnosis and it provides a level of care. And then all the way up to the GAIN-I, which is a 2-hour comprehensive biopsychosocial assessment used for detailed treatment planning, like those entering formal substance use treatment for clinicians that need an evidence-based tool to help them diagnose and that. So that's the distinction there with those. For all the instruments, norms have been established both for adults and adolescents overall and by level of care. And so norms are just common characteristics. So there's so much GAIN data that if you're a researcher and an evaluator and you say, I want to know what all the adolescents look like that reported that were in outpatient treatment when they were given their GAIN. There's thousands and thousands of those records, right? So we put that in there we create those norms for researchers and for others that want to look at big data down to specific populations or to the specific levels of care. All the instruments are available in the GAIN EBS software that we're going to look at here in a few minutes. And so the software is used for interactive administration of the assessments, immediate access to client summary reports with scoring, and the software has the ability to interact or to be embedded in EHRs, so you can do a single sign-on through your EHR that hops you over to the GAIN system. All the instruments are available in English and Spanish on the pen and paper copies and in the software. And all the instruments provide a statement of risk of recidivism based solely on the responses within the GAIN Q3 assessment. And we'll look at that more closely. So the GAIN Q3 Lite is used to identify and address a wide range of problems among adolescents and adults. So it's designed for those 12 and older, or the equivalent of a 6th grade reading level. It's been done with participants younger, but obviously that can run into problems with terminology, grasping timeframes, understanding what exactly you're asking them, and questions that can be complicated if you're younger. And I already mentioned that, but yeah, using diverse settings, not just clinical settings, kind of across the board as an expanded screener. It's about 25 to 30 minutes to administer the Gain Q3 Lite assessment. As you've done many of them, that'll get shorter. Some of them, for example, if you have once you've had a lot of experience, if the participant isn't reporting very many problems, you'll be doing some of these in 20 minutes, or it's not very long, but it gives you a lot of information on the back end and a lot of information for that higher level, consistent data. So the Gain Q3 Lite consists of 8 screeners across these 8 life areas. And so in each of these screeners, as I'll show you here in a few minutes, you're just asking the client about the recency of problems and then their recency of treatment participation in that specific life area, right? So they ask about the recency of their problems with school. And then you'll ask them, when's the last time they had any assistance or treatment specific to school? And so the goal of asking these questions is to triage the clients into 3 levels in each of the 8 screener life areas. So this is kind of like the scoring. They either have low or no problems. So you ask them, when was the last time you had this host of problems in this life area? And they didn't have any. Okay, good. They don't need anything right now. Maybe reassess them in 3 months or so. But really just monitoring, right? They don't really need anything right now. They didn't report any problems. Moderate means they had a few problems. They need something. It could be a brief intervention, something low invasive, right? High or severe, they reported several problems in that life area, and they need something. Ideally, they need something more intense, if possible. But really, the big cutoff there is if low or no, they don't need anything right now. Moderate, high, severe, they need something. What that is, of course, is what's available in your area. What's available for your program, what you do. But that's kind of the short of it. It's scored very easily, and the software scores it for you and puts it in reports that we'll look at. So you don't need to know the background of scoring really. So immediately upon completion of the assessment, either doing the assessment interactively on your computer or entering the completed pen and paper copy, you can generate a whole host of reports. I'm going to go over these fairly quickly, and then I'm going to show them again in the software so you can see what they look like, how that relates to where they're at with the assessment and that. The screener summary is just a 2-page. If you want to say you want to, I just want a quick look at the scores. I don't want to go through a whole report. I don't need to look through the longer reports. I just want to look at the scores real quick. So as you can see here, as I was just explaining, the scores are low or no, moderate, or high. And that's what these 3 columns represent, right? So you want to look at a quick 1 page. Here's their scores in all these different life areas you asked them about. And then on the second page of this report, there's just a succinct statement of the problem severity in each screener and a recommendation that goes with that. So they had moderate problems in this life area. They should get something like this, right? So if you just want a 1 statement for each, that's also provided in this report. The other reports go way more in depth, and we'll look at that one in greater detail. The Gain Q3 Individual Clinical Profile, or ICP, is similar to the screener summary we were just looking at, but it expands and it includes several more scales that are represented in the assessment, right? Again, it's the same scoring, low, moderate, or high. And so it's another way to quickly identify areas of priority at a glance, right? You can see that top bar there. You can look at that and you automatically know they're high severity, recency of substance use problems. And this one, looking at this one, basically the bigger the bar, the worse they are, right? See a lot of bigger bars, the worse they are in that area, or the more help they need, more problems they're experiencing. The personalized feedback report is a template to do some motivational interviewing if that's of interest to you. And it can also be used to, if you're not going to do motivational interviewing, it can be used to reflect with the client on what they reported during the assessment. As you can see here on the first page of the report, it's written in a way that you're talking to the client. So it's really just a script. So now that we've finished up your assessment, I'd like to speak with you about what changes, if any, you'd like to make. And then it goes through each life area and it bullets out the problems they reported. So it gives you a script to approach the results of the assessment with the client. And it gives you opportunities to ask on comment what's worked in the past and what they are doing now to keep things working well. And so you begin with the things where they didn't report problems. So you start talking about those, like, it looks like this is going well, what's going on in this area. And then you start, ease your way into where they reported problems. And, one of the goals of this is to let the client know that they have a voice in their service or their referral planning. This is certainly not something you have to use, if you're more comfortable doing that on your own or however, but it's a script that it's there, and it's just, to help summarize the results assessment with the client. The GAIN Q3 recommendation referral summary is the big one. So this is really like the results of the GAIN. It's about 8 to 10 pages, depending on how many problems they reported. And it's a fully editable narrative that's written in a way that you don't have to be familiar with the GAIN at all. So, you can give this to a judge or a probation officer. If they've never heard of the GAIN, they can still read through here and see what the client reported, right? It's written in plain English or plain Spanish, either one. And so it's, again, designed to be shared. It's fully editable. So we're going to look at some of the options you can use this report and how you can edit it, and you can add things and delete things and make different versions of the report for different audiences or for different folks you're going to share it with. If you might want to share the whole report with your team, but to other collaborators, stakeholders, or judges, you might want to take out certain sections that aren't relevant to them. So again, the report includes presenting information and demographics, and then a section on evaluation procedure. So how the assessment was done, where was it at? Did the interviewer notice anything about the client that they were, maybe hostile, or they were cooperative, or they seemed anxious or in withdrawal or whatever? There's a whole host of short set of ratings at the end of the assessment that you do after you're done talking to the client, after you tell the client, thank you, that's all the questions we have. There's some ratings you put in there so that if somebody else is reviewing this, they can see, like, what was your perception of the client and of the setting. Were there a lot of people in earshot? Maybe the client wasn't totally forthcoming if there's a lot of people that were around or could hear things, or and then it goes through each section of the assessment in the same order of sections and life areas. And then at the very end, it has a quality of life index, which is a calculation of how well the client's doing overall. So it puts together all 8 of these sections or life areas and gives you one score, right? So if that's helpful, that's also something we'll take a look at. So in each of those GAIN Q3 recommendation referral summary reports, you can include or not include with a click of a button a risk of recidivism statement. So this is the likelihood that the client will be rearrested within the next 6 months based solely on the crime and violence and substance use questions within the screener. That's validated, and if anyone would like more information on how the research behind that and how it was validated, I can certainly share that. We have a whole host of that. It was done in-house by our researchers and lead developers of the game. Let's see. Okay, so GAIN ABS, or Assessment Building System, is the software. It's HIPAA compliant, web-based software. It's hosted by us on our servers. There's nothing you have to set up. It's similar to any other website. You go in, you got a login name and password. We set up all the login names and passwords, provide them to you, and do all the maintenance of that. So you really just have to have an internet connection, and the reports come out as PDFs. So GAIN ABS includes skip logic. When you're using the pen and paper copy, you notice there's some places where there's some skips in brackets that you have to follow, or you'll ask the client unnecessary questions. In GAIN ABS, there's skip logic, so those questions would be hidden if you're supposed to skip them. You'll only ever see the questions that you need to ask next. Like we just looked at, there's client summary reports with scoring, and then there's also data export. So if you want to look at your aggregate data, you can do that at a jail level. BHA can do that at a higher level and include all data. You can break down data by time frames. Like I just want past year. I want all of it. You can break it down by I want to include confidential information or I don't want to include confidential information. So sometimes folks will have an evaluator or an outside evaluator that they want to work with their data. They don't need to say confidential information, right? For example. So that's something you'll also have in your accounts and access. Okay. I'm gonna turn this off. Okay, let's see. Any questions? We'll have plenty of times for questions at the end, I believe, too.
I think we do have a question. Scott, will clients be assigned a unique identifier, or will their identified information be submitted to the database?
It'll be created by the user. And I'm going to show that too. So when you log in before you do an assessment, you have to create a client record, which is name and a unique ID that can be any combination of letters and numbers decided by you, decided locally. So it can be an existing ID that's from some other program or whatever.
Okay.
It might be, or it can just be random. It just you have to create one before you do the assessment.
Bree, did that answer your question? Feel free to come off mute. Also, if anybody would like to chat, if not, because I see there's another question in the chat. Will we need to transfer the information from GAIN to Civicor?
I think with my question, I was wondering if we need to sign like a release of information for Chestnut, or if the client's data will be de-identified when we enter it into the database.
You don't need to sign that with us. We've already covered that in the data use agreement outlines our restrictions for hosting your data to be in compliance with HIPAA. So we don't need anything like that. That covers that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And then Cassie, your question, will we need to transfer the information from GAIN to Civicor? No, there will be no need to transfer that information. Is the signer of the data share agreement? Yeah, so those data sharing agreements, which I probably should have touched on that at the beginning. And Scott, if you don't mind, before you get into this part, I do want to touch on that real quick. We absolutely need to get those data sharing agreements back from every jail. We don't have all of those back yet. We can't proceed with this until we have those back. And again, we plan to implement this on July 1. So for those who have not gotten those signed yet by the signing authority, whether it is it can be anybody within the jail, well, not anybody, but anybody, whoever is the program coordinator, sheriff, under sheriff, it really doesn't matter who from the jail signs it. But we do need to have those done and turned in as soon as possible. Okay, back to you, Scott.
Thanks. So can you see a login page?
Yes.
Okay. To be in compliance with HIPAA, every person logging into the system needs their own unique login name and password. We have to keep track of everyone who has access to the system, and we do. So you'll have a user account, as we call it, and that'll log into your jail's account specifically, right? For confidentiality and to protect clients' records. You're not just logging into some huge database, right? We set up an account first for your jail, and then your jail tells us who should have access. And then we set up that user account, send you your activation, you set up your login name, whatever you want it to be. And the same with deactivations. We deactivate folks when they leave in that. And so just to go on along with that, with the data sharing agreements, once we have the data sharing agreements, I'll be reaching out to each jail or sheriff's office and asking them what persons need access to this. Once I get those names and emails, you'll have access in a day or two. That's quick, 5 minutes for us. And then, so you'll come here, you'll log in. once you log in, there's always an information page here. So stay updated. Here's some news about the Gain Coordinating Center. Get assistance. We have a technical assistance, ABS support at chestnut.org. I clicked on the forgot password button. It's not working. I'm not getting the reset email. They'll help you out. I started a client and now I can't find them. I need to do their assessment. They'll help you out, that type of thing. And then we also have Gain info on here. That goes to me and my team. Anything else? I don't know how to administer this one, or I need a paper copy, or anything like that. And then get calendars. If you don't need a calendar for the Gain Q3, Gain data export, just information. The top here is the top here is kind of how you get around. Search is how you get around individual clients. Site reports, we'll look at those a little bit later. And then your export, if you want to export aggregate data to Excel or to SPSS analytic files, you can do so at any time. If that's your role, or if that's something you do on a regular basis, we can also help you set a schedule for this. So it just runs it if you want to do it every month or whatever you want. Or you can just come in and do it whenever you want. Right here, you can provide feedback. It'd be cool if the system did this or did that. And our developers do review these all the time. So if you want to, you can view feedback. You can post your own. You can like or dislike somebody else's. The help button is on every single page. So if you click on the help button, it'll pull up documentation or built-in manuals that are relevant to the page you're on. We'll look at those when we get more into the assessment and reports, and to see the utility of those. So when you click search, you can do advanced, if you want to look for a specific person. You can type in whatever you like, if you know their first name or whatever. You click the icon, it pulls up all the clients you've ever created, right? And so as you're going along and getting started and doing these assessments, you're building a database for your jail or for your sheriff's office, whatever it might be, of all all your clients that you did assessments with. So you can always go back to them, see when it was done, grab the assessment, grab the results, any reports you need or whatever, and easily see how many assessments you've done, So if you haven't had that client yet, you can click add new client. So there's so many clients in here. I bet you that's a duplicate number. So it'll not let you do duplicate client numbers. Gender and date of birth are optional. You also collect date of birth within the assessment. Groups are for large organizations who have dozens or hundreds of staff. Sometimes they split up their staff into, I work with these staff work with adolescents, these staff work with adults. They don't need to see each other's clients. So you can assign a client so it's kind of assigned to a group of users, right? If you only have a few, if you and your team can see each other's clients and gain assessments, you don't need that really, because it's just an extra step. But if you want it, we'll set it up. It's no problem. All right, so this is the client record view. So before you do an assessment, you have to create a treatment episode. That's right here. The stuff on the left-hand bar is all optional. This is stuff outside of the assessment. So collaterals, you can enter collateral information of people related to that client. This is something that's used for programs that do a lot of tracking and follow-ups. So let's say after they discharge a client from their program, they want to do a follow-up gain assessment like 6 months later or something, or they're doing research or something. They need to find this person. So they might put this information in there and say, like, if I can't get a hold of this person from the last number I have from them, I have these other collateral people that may know where they're at, and I can try to schedule that assessment interview. Again, that one's optional. All these on the left are optional. Along with collaterals, you can also do contact information, so you can get a lot of information about that client. When we do a lot of research out of our Chicago office, and we follow folks for years, and so we do a lot of this. We'll fill out, everybody that we can to know where they might be, where does their mom live, where does their aunt live, where, And we find people in, you know, a year later that in populations that are often hard to find or often move around a lot. Demographics. So some of this is already pre-populated from what I entered. You can enter some other stuff you want, middle initial, you know, tax ID number, other state ID. I don't think a lot of programs do that, but a certain some you can do. Social security number is optional. You can put that in there if you want an extra identifier. Certainly don't have to. You can set up self-assessment. I don't recommend it, but you can do it if you want. It's available in the system. The reason why I don't recommend it is that you need someone available to answer questions as the client goes through the assessment. And fielding those questions and getting them back on track is probably going to take you longer than actually doing the assessment yourself. But it's possible in the system. And what it'll do is it'll give them like a one-time login. So all they can do is do their assessment. They can't see anything else. They can't search for any clients. All they can do is do their assessment and log out, right? A temporary one-time login. Treatment episodes, we'll get to that. That's where you do the assessment. Treatment history is another optional thing. So outside of the assessment, if you want to enter in things about the client's treatment, you can enter in this, and then you can you'll have that in the client's treatment episode here, but then you can also run it as a PDF report of all the clients. Like, you know, Joe is in this treatment for this long, and it's this program code, it's this type of treatment, outpatient, inpatient, whatever. And then, you know, John was in this treatment, you know, but certainly optional. And then this is similarly, what kind of transition was it? Did they step down? Were they released to the community? You know, you can document all that stuff if you want. That's all optional. So create a treatment episode is not optional to do the assessment. So first you got to create a treatment episode. This that's showing up here, the follow-up type, you can do follow-up assessments if you would like to. That's optional. So some programs will do an intake gain Q3, and then they'll do a gain Q3 3 months later, or 6 months later, or at discharge, you know. And so you can do those however you like with each client. And you can also set up a schedule in here. So there's a list of who's due for a follow-up assessment, right? So let's say you want to reassess everyone at 3 months. You can set it up so that the window to reassess them opens up after 2 months and it closes after 4 months. So within that 2 to 4 month range, they're on your list. Like this assessment needs to be collected, and it'll include the collection date and the window if you want to do follow. But that's certainly up to your program and your team and your hierarchies that be. So once you create a treatment episode, you can click actions, or you can click this plus sign. There's a whole host of these here, since this is our dummy account, our demo account. You'll have two options: gain Q3 Lite or gain Q3 Lite follow-up. Okay, that's one of my people, sorry. You click on gain Q3 Lite, and then this is where you start. Enter in the time. Observation wave is always 0 for an intake. If you do follow-up assessments, if it's around 3 months, 3. If it's around 6 months, 6. Just so they have a code on them. The rest of this stuff is already populated. You can change the English change from English to Spanish or Portuguese. The local site ID is an identifier for data. If you want to label all your assessments by population or what have you, you can certainly do so. The staff populates with who logged in. You shouldn't have to change this, but if you did half an assessment and then you couldn't finish it, and another staff member or one of your team members did the other one, you could change it, but I just leave it to the one who did it originally. Click save, and then click begin interview. And so all that right there pertains to whether you're doing it interactively with the client sitting with you at your computer, or if you're entering the pen and paper copy. All that I just showed is the same, whether you're doing either one. So this is where you start with the client. This is the introduction. You want to tell them about the purpose of the assessment, the format, how long it's going to take, then privacy and confidentiality. It's very, very important to read all of these. Within that privacy and confidentiality, within that middle paragraph of that last section, If you need to tailor that, I would certainly do so. And you know, if there's a lot of additional information that you need, you might want to have that as a pen and paper copy, if you know, on your desk or whatever, or wherever you're at, to read it to the client, to let them know that they are, let them know about the assessment. And we've always found that if the client knows about the purpose of the assessment and why you're doing it, they're way more likely to be cooperative and respond to you. You know, instead of just saying, hey, I got some questions, and, you know, let them know why they're doing it. And, you know, you can certainly expand on this. There's programs that, you know, tailor and make their own introductions that say, you know, or do yours how you would approach the client when you're gonna ask them questions anyways. You know, you're the expert on your own life. So we can provide you with the best services. We need to know what's going on. We don't want to give you services you don't need, and we don't give everyone the same services. We want to know about you. And that's why we do this with everyone. We don't do it with just you. We don't, you know, whatever you want to do, but here's the canned and what should, you know, to run with. And then here you start with the client. As we go through this questionnaire, transitional statements and introductions here are always in bold. And then the actual items or questions will be here. You always read the questions as written. All these questions and items in the assessment are validated. They're written a certain way for a reason. As we get into the mental health and substance use, for example, those are mapped from DSM. So they're written in a way for a reason. I wouldn't paraphrase. That affects validity. I wouldn't leave things out. That affects validity. It's a really, really short assessment anyways, you know. So I wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't reword on the fly. You certainly will have chances or situations where you'll need to explain a question or an item to the client, but I would still definitely, you know, make sure they're responding to the question as it was written whenever possible. In every question, so in that part of that introduction, you let the client know what was included in that introduction. That you can say you don't know or refuse to answer any questions, you know, but we'd like you to answer every question if you're able to and if you can. But if they don't know or if they refuse, you can choose that for every question here. That's certainly not ideal. That doesn't help your data or anything. It doesn't really give you anything. And then, but that's an option for every question on here. And then you also have the notes. So say the client responds to the question and you document it, but then they give you another piece of information that you think is really helpful or really relevant or significant. You can document that here. And then later on, when you're in the narrative report, after the assessment is over, you can pull up all those notes, and with the click of a button, you can add them in if you want to. So they'll be like available later. They're not just lost or that. So next. And then so you'll go through some more reasons why they got to you, why they're doing an assessment, who referred them, if anyone did, and that. You'll notice that on each page there's there's only a couple questions on each page, and then you have to click next to get to the next ones, to the next set of questions. That's because every time you click next, it saves everything you've already done. So if your internet boots you out, you don't lose the whole assessment. You only lose the page you're on if you filled out anything on the page. So there's only 1 or 2 questions on each page for that specific purpose. And you don't have to click save or anything. Next is saved for you. Tracker, you can skip to any sections. So they're just in order: background, school problems, work problems, physical health. Crime and violence is the last section with the client. Then Z is the end. You tell them thanks, that's all the questions we have. And then XA, the administration ratings, is for the administrative ratings is for you. So that's the things where you answer questions about where was the assessment conducted. Was it in an intake unit? Was it in a treatment unit? Was it in a jail? Was it, you know, in the community? And then what was the client's demeanor during the assessment? And then you document how long it took you to complete the assessment. Just some extra things. So if anyone's reviewing the results of your assessments, like a supervisor or something, they understand the context of when the assessment, where the assessment was done and how it was done. So I'm going to, since that assessment wasn't completed, I'm going to go to a completed one to look at the reports real quick. Let's see. Okay, so Frida did again Q3 lights. So as soon as you're done with the assessment, you click this, and these are all your options. You can continue with the interview. If you didn't complete it, if you needed to stop and need to complete it. I don't think that it's going to happen very often. Again, it's like 25 minutes. Once you get good at them, you'll be doing them in like 20 minutes. So probably won't have a lot of those where you stop and pick up. I'm going to start at I'm actually going to start at the bottom. This makes more sense. So in the system, you either have interviewer permissions or you have supervisor permissions. The only difference is that a supervisor can delete stuff, can delete clients, can delete assessments. So we ask your program who should be a supervisor and who shouldn't. Basically, that's the only difference. You can transfer an assessment. So if there's you can have transfer links between other jails or sheriff offices if you'd like to. That's not relevant, then since this is such a short assessment, I don't know if that's the best use of time. It's probably better just to do one since it's so short. But that is an option. To transfer assessments, it makes a copy so you don't lose anything in your account, and they just get to accept the copy of it, and now it lives in both accounts. Copy to a gain 5.6 or 5.7. That's the full 2-hour assessment. That's not really relevant, I don't think, to you, but for programs that do the long assessment, they can do this and then copy it over so there's less questions on the long assessment. Again, the screener summary is just that 2-page. Like, I want to look at the score in each section for this client, and I want it to be quick and short. So there's a score for each one, and then the next is that succinct statement of what's their status in each section and what's that brief recommendation, right? We'll look at the full-length report here in a few minutes, and you see the full-length report will have multiple recommendations in each section. But if you just want one, like a snapshot or one statement for each, this is it. And then here there's always a paragraph about interpretation here. Sorry, I keep getting bars here. Okay. So you'll notice when you click the reports, they open in a separate tab. Let's see, the full assessment printout is just that. It's just all the questions and answers. There's no scoring, just, all the questions, all the answers. We looked at one slide over the Q3 personalized feedback report. Again, this is that report to support motivational interviewing. Again, you start with an overview that's written in a way that you're speaking with the client or participant. And then it goes over the areas where they didn't have any problems. It looks like you didn't have any problems in work, physical health, and crime and violence. How are you doing in these areas? So you can use these bullet points if you want to talk to the client after the assessment about how the strengths or the areas where they're not having problems. And then you get into where they are having problems, right? So this client reported high severity problems in school. So what it's telling you is collect the readiness to change and follow the skip. If any of you are familiar with motivational interviewing, there's a lot of that terminology in here. You can ask the client which area they want to talk about first, and you can skip to that area. So if you get to school, now it's going to list out on the assessment what the client self-reported. So these 3 bullets are the problems you reported having in the past 90 days related to school. And so then you have the option, you can ask them, how ready are you to make changes in school specifically? And so once you get that, there's a option on the right. If under 90, do the first paragraph. If 90 to 100, do the first one. Consolidating commit, or the second one, consolidating commitment, right? They say they're 100% ready to make changes, they're ready. Try to consolidate commitment, and so each section just goes like that. Action planning, you have some opportunities to offer some suggestions of things that may help them with their school that that helped other people or that helps some people, and ask them what are their thoughts on these ideas. So really the idea is just to get them thinking about if they want to make changes, and if they do, let's talk about action stuff. If you're already ready, let's talk about action things. So again, that's just an optional script that you can use to reflect on the assessment with the client and set up some motivational interviewing.
Scott, can I ask, excuse me, we have one question in the chat and I want to touch on that before we move on from this.
Yep.
Can you go back to an assessment if you have to stop due to a code or something happening in the jail?
Yep. Continue with interview is always here.
Okay.
So if you go to continue with interview, it's gonna show everything you did, and then you click tracker and jump to where you're at. So let's, I was asking the client about physical health. Okay, here I am. So you can always go back to them. And sorry, I can't see the chat. I have to minimize the Zoom bar so far so I can see the screen.
Yeah, no, you're great. I'm keeping an eye on it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so the Q3 RS or recommendation referral summary. This is the fully narrative summary or results of the assessment. So we'll look at this. So before you run this, it asks you how you want the header to identify the client. If you're going to share it with somebody, you don't want their full name, you can just do first name, initials, client number, or enter your own. And then, or you can do the full assessment. And then you can also run the report in a different language. Just like the assessment, you can run it in a different language if you would like.
Scott, one other question. Is there a sandbox version or a way to play around in the program before we are entering true results?
Two answers to that. We have a demo account where we let trial users use that they use as a sandbox, and they can play around, and there's full assessments in there. They can create new assessments for fake clients, just no real client data. So we can provide that. But the easier route is probably to create fake clients in your real account and just delete them. Like, just make sure their name is something very obvious that you need to delete them. But either one of those options is we'll provide you the sandbox option.
Okay. And then
good question.
Yeah,
definitely.
Sometimes internet connectivity is an issue in the jail. Is there a paper version of the inventory to use with the client and input the answers into the electronic database later?
Yes, and I'm going to show the pen and paper version here in a few minutes. And so yeah, you can do either one, and you start the assessment the same way I just showed you, and you finish it the same way, and then the reports are immediately available. So yeah, certainly pen and paper is an option. And the good thing about this version is that since it's so short, especially once you get familiar after you've done a few of them, the entering the pen and paper copy is not going to take you long at all. All the questions with the client after, so we were looking at the demographic questions, the first ones. After, there's only a handful of those. After that, the majority of the questions are all a drop down. So once you get familiar with it, you'll cruise through entering those. There's not very many questions where you have to type in. Only a few verbatims at the beginning, and then after that, all the questions are a drop down choice that the client's responding to that you choose.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions for now.
Okay. So immediately when you're done with the assessment or you've entered it, you can run this recommendation referral summary, which is that fully editable report or the results. This is the big payoff in terms of individual clients. This gives you a full report of everything they reported, and then their problem severity. So everything they reported in each section, a score in each section, and then recommendations based on that score, right? So each score in each section has a canned set of recommendations that are like best practices for that score in that life area. And those are fully editable too. So, right. So since this assessment is used around the country, they're written in best practices, but in a way to where you can tailor them to stuff that's around your area or places that you refer to in that, and programs that you have. So you can make them as specific as you want or keep them as general as you want. And with the click of a button, you can delete the ones that you're not going to do. There's no reason to keep them in there if you're not going to do them, right? So first it starts out with presenting information. So when you when you're going through this report, again, you can be as thorough as you want. You can add anything. As you can see, it's kind of like a Word doc. You have all these options up here. It feels and it operates just like a Word doc. You can bold things, bullet things. Our developers have tried to make it as easy as possible. So it's already like formatted in a nice way. One thing that you'll notice in each section is that there's a prompt, right? So even if you're not going to edit anything, I would recommend removing this prompt so that it's not on the finished report, not on the finished PDF, because then it doesn't really look like it's finalized. It'll still say prompt, but all you gotta do is click that button, it goes away. So some options that folks do is say, Frida is a 13-year-old Hispanic Latino or Chicano, Mexican, self-described as Mexican American. Okay, so the first set right here is what the interviewer coded after the client said their verbatim, right? So one edit I make to this is I take all that out and I just keep her verbatim. You still, and another important thing about this report is that this doesn't take anything away from the assessment or doesn't change anything away from the assessment. So the interviewer's code after the client's verbatim is still in the assessment, right? So I do that just to kind of clean it up, make it shorter. You can add stuff. You can expand on if you want to include things up here that you want to be right there on the top of the first page, like last arrest or legal involvement or anything like that, or living arrangement. You can certainly add that here, but it's just pulling things from the assessment and putting them in a orderly way. And in a way that's easy to read through, and you don't have to be trained in GAIN or anything like that too. So at any time, so you do whatever edits you want to. If you want to do any, you click save, you can click preview. It'll open a new tab, and then you'll see the PDF, so you can see where you're at. So, if you're new to this and you're making edits, you might want to say, okay, does that look how I want it to look? Okay, click preview really quick. Opens up the PDF. Okay, that looks good. And you close that back out. You're still back in the editing screens. Notes is in the margin. We were looking at if you want to add, if there's any notes that the client, things that the client mentions after they respond to the question or the item, and you typed it in, you can pull up those here. So Frida reported that her father was in jail for this item. And so, you can see, these are notes that the interviewer thought were, and you can say used or reviewed, lacking them out if you need to, or you can just not do that and just leave them there. But they're there if you need them. Go to is, you can jump to any section of this report. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then of course, save and next. If you type a bunch of edits and you say, I don't like that now, I don't know why I did all this. I don't know why I went down this path. You can click view unedited and then revert just takes it back to what the software created on its own. So you're just back to the beginning of this section. You're back to where we started. And then it gives you one option to say, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to. That's fine. I'll leave it. Presenting information. Again, it's more about demographics, evaluation procedure, how the assessment was done, those staff ratings at the very end after you're done asking the client all the questions. This is how the assessment was done, where it was done, who did it, on what date. Okay, so now let's get into school. Let's see. Let me go back. Okay. So in each section or life area, it's going to tell you about their problems. So for school, you want to know about attendance. You might, delete some things here, click save, and then click the prompt to go away. Prompt resolved, so it doesn't show up on the final PDF report. And then it'll bullet out all the problems that the client reported. After you do a couple of these, it's gonna, when you run this report, it's obviously gonna look very much like what the client told you and look very familiar, So every section has the same thing: problems, and then interventions. Did they report any treatment in that section or life area? And then each section, again, will include a problem severity that's written in plain English. There's nothing you have to do with this. You can take the recommendations and edit them. You click edit, takes this, discuss current school problems with Frida to review the problem. It's probably a good one. You know, you might say, refer Frida for a more detailed educational needs evaluation to better assess the nature of the school-related problems. Again, you know, these are written, they're based on best practices, based on this problem severity. Frida had severe school problems. And they should or could be tailored to whatever you have available in your area. So, you know, I'll click cancel this. I say we're not going to do this third one. You can just delete it. It takes it off. You can use these arrows if you want to move these up to prioritize them. And then again, you can pull up the PDF at any time. And where's school problems? And see, okay, I took that one recommendation out. Now I have these. Okay. And so that's how you go through the report. And then we can look at the PDF here it's kind of easier to look at the PDF at first before you get familiar with it. But those editing screens, it'll be easy to go through them once you get familiar with the assessment. But you go through each one, you can review the information, review the problems, and review the recommendations and tailor them as you like. Any questions?
I think we're good.
So
Wait.
yeah.
Are there any? Yeah, I'm not seeing anything like that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So as we're going through, this is just each section of the assessment in order of the assessment. Again, I'm going to show you the pen and paper copy too. This might help link things up. I know I'm showing a bunch of showing the software, then showing reports, and then, you know, I'm just trying to use this time wisely and show you as much as I can at this time. And, you know, again, me and my team, this is what we're here for, to answer questions about this stuff. This is what we do. Okay, so you go through all these. And then at the end, it has a table that's one sentence for each of those sections. So basically it's a summary of the full report that we just went through, if that's helpful. And then at the end, you have a place here where when you're editing that you can remove this prompt and include an overall recommendation if you'd like to, or you can remove that whole reference if you'd like to.
We did have one question in the chat. How often does this information save?
How often does it save?
Yeah. And Callie, if you want to expand on your question, come off mute and go ahead and do that.
I'm just curious if I needed to walk away for a second and then, you know, is it saving as you're typing, or is it saving every 5 minutes? How does it preserve?
In the report specifically?
As you're doing the intake, how often is it saving?
It's saving every time you click next. So that's why there's only 2 or 3 questions on each page, because every time you click next, it saves everything you already did. So if you, I think you're talking about timeout, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the timeout, I want to say the timeout is 10 minutes, but I'm going to ask our software team about that because I don't want to steer you off.
I don't want to speak.
I believe it's 10 minutes, but it may be longer than that. But I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to ask and follow up with everyone on that.
So Anita, with your question, she's asking, so does it not auto save every minute or so? It doesn't sound like it does.
No, it doesn't. But you're only going to be on each page. Some pages you're not even, you're like not even gonna be on for a minute. You know.
Right. Yeah. Be quick.
So the next button is really to get you the next set of questions is saving every time you.
I'm sorry, can I clarify something, please?
Sure.
So if I'm sitting in a housing area in the jail and there's an emergency code and I have to leave, and I cannot complete the assessment. Am I gonna have to start it all over again? Or is there gonna be a place where it'll be saved partially incomplete? And I can come back and start back up where I left off?
Yeah, you just log in, search for that client, and everything that you already completed will already be in there. So you open up the assessment, because even if you answer one question, it saves the assessment record. And then there's always a button when you click on the assessment to say continue with interview. Even if you completed the assessment, there's always an option to continue with interview if you needed to go back in and change an answer or something. But so yeah, at any time, it's just, it's there, and what you completed is still there.
And then there's another question. I don't know if we're at that point of discussing it, but it says, does this version of the game generate suggested diagnoses?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Back to you, Scott.
Okay, thank you. See. We're looking at the very end of the report. There's signatures. So there's always one for the clinician. Then you can add one if you want somebody else to sign this, a supervisor, or even the client, if you choose to share this report with the client. So you can add a signature if you want, or you can just leave it as clinician. This go-to is how you hop around the report. Final edits. So let's say, so everything here is, you can see it's set by default to print on the PDF, right? Let's say I'm going to share this with someone who doesn't need to see about sources of stress or whatever it might be. You can unclick these. It doesn't remove any data from the report. It doesn't remove any data from the assessment. It just hides it on the PDF. So you don't have to open up the report and like try to delete all this stuff. You can just hide it by doing this. The one thing that doesn't print by default is the risk of recidivism statement, because there's programs that don't use that. So if you want that, all you do is click that go-to button and click this, and it'll be on the report. So Frida has a moderate risk for recidivism because she scored in the low range on the crime and violence screener and scored in the moderate range in substance use screener. Approximately 23 to 35% clients in this category recidivate within 6 months. So there's always a statement there that you can include on the report if you would like, or you can leave it off. And then, so those final edits, you can close that. And then we're back to the client record view. So again, for each client, for each client, you'll put in their name, their ID, and then you'll create a treatment episode, and then you can create an assessment, and then you can always come back to it, and it'll look like this. If someone leaves your program or leaves your jail and comes back 6 months later and you want to do another intake, you create a new treatment episode, right? So then you'll have a single, because ideally you want a single client record that has treatment episodes and assessments within them, treatment episode, assessments within them that are associated with that single treatment episode, right? I mentioned this earlier, but you'll be able to, if you like to, do follow-up assessments. The follow-up assessment is the same as the intake, except it leaves out a few of the demographic questions, like race, ethnicity identified, and it leaves out the reason for coming to the program, or the reason for, why are you coming for this assessment today? It leaves those questions out. But then after that, it's the same thing. It's the same questions, same items. Any questions on that? We can look at the pen and paper copy. Or Camille, do you have things you want to do now, and then I can do that after, or whatever you all prefer?
I'm good with whatever's easier for you.
So I'm going to we can look at the pen and paper copy. Would that be helpful? Or should I do something else first, or? I can do whatever.
Go ahead and do that because I've had a couple questions from people asking about the paper copies. So yeah, go ahead and do that if you could.
Okay, great. All right, so we call this the training copy, but all it is the actual pen and paper copy, and we put some hints in the margins and stuff for new interviewers, right? Remember to do this, or since a new instrument, a new tool can be a bit overwhelming at first. So this is a pen and paper copy. It's the exact same questions and items and required fields that as we were looking at in the software. So you can certainly do this and then enter it in. Again, that won't take you very much time. You can enter it in so you can get the results. Again, read the introduction. And then, so as I mentioned, we're in the software. Make sure you read this to all clients. Actually, read all this. So you want to read all this to all clients, except this. Only read this if your agency has obtained this certificate, right? Read only if applicable. We've obtained a certificate of confidentiality prevents from being forced to give any information to the court. So whether or not that's, read that or don't read that, depending on what you're to do. The stuff in green is the stuff that's
Babbling now. It's not really.
yeah. So you read that introduction, and then you always want this additional administration instructions. You always want to tell the client, it's important that you try to answer each question if you can, willing to, but if you do not have to, if you don't know or refuse to answer, you can.
Scott, we're
Hey,
still
Scott.
only seeing the online stuff. We only see the create new treatment.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I was just gonna say,
I forgot I was sharing the program and not the screen. I'm sorry about that.
no, you're good.
Sure.
There we go. Now we can see it.
Okay, thanks so much for telling me. Okay, so again, always read the introduction. This, it's the same fields that are required in the software if you're going to do it in software interactively on your computer. Always read the introductions, and then this we have also obtained a certificate of confidentiality prevents from being forced to give any information to the court. Only read that if your agency has obtained the certificate. So either read that or don't read that if you have it or not. The additional administration instructions, again, very helpful to let the client know why you're doing this. You all know that, but this is here to, let them know. They can say don't know or refuse, but you really like to answer the questions because you want their services to be specific to them and to their services to fit their needs and to help them. And then the bottom here's a hint for basically the assessment overall. Remember to document all corrections by crossing it out. Initially data change. Remember to read all transitional statements. Remember to follow the skips and read each required item exactly as printed. The transitional statements will help you keep the client going where you want them to go, right? That's why they're in there. And so then it's just pen and paper and like the text boxes in the software. In a few words, can you tell me why you're here today? What's your main reason for coming to treatment? And then document the verbatim and then clarify in code which one is the closest one. Don't read all these. There's no need to. There's no need to take that time. That's for efficiency, don't read all those. Take their verbatim, and if you're not sure how to code it based on the verbatim, just clarify it with them a little bit, But this is a big list. Most of them fit in here. And if it doesn't fit in there, it fits in the 99 other. So again, the same format. What's the verbatim from the client, and then code it based on what they said. Several different individuals, several different agencies here. Background information. What is your gender? Basic stuff here. You see, here's the first skip. If over 18, go to B3A. There's only a few skips in this assessment. It's very short. If over 18, go to B3A because you don't need to ask them about who currently has legal custody of them, right? They tell you they're 18 or over. Skip this one, save you some time. Races, ethnicities, nationalities, or tribes. Unlike the other one, what's your main reason for coming to treatment? This one, you do want to ask any others. Let them tell you any ones they feel they identify with, right? List them all out and then circle the ones that they mentioned. So pretty straightforward. Whatever they say, whatever they want to report for that, of course they can do that. what's the last grade you completed in school? Not one you were in. What's the last one you finished? Not the one you dropped out in, the one you finished, right? And then another mentioned item, any others? You got any diplomas, degrees, certificates, professional things? What's following best describe your sexual orientation? A whole list and then an other, if they want to report something not in this list. Current marital status that you may need to clarify after being vague about their marital status, you know? Like, oh, me and my wife split up, but we're still living together, or this, you know, whatever it might be. You might need to clarify that one to get one of these responses. It can't be two, it's got to be one. So the next questions are military questions. If the person has never been in the military, like, go to B17. If they've never been in the military, skip several questions, 2 pages of questions. And now you're on to the questions. So those are the only 2 skips that we looked at. The rest of it, there's no skips. You ask everybody all these questions. And the rest of these are set up the same. So in school problems, you're going to tell the client, I want using card Q. We have a card Q on a sheet of paper that you can print out if you like. It helps the client stay with you sometimes. And I'll send that to you so you can give it to them, because all these questions, the whole rest of the assessment is card Q. When was the last time you had this problem? And they're just giving you a time frame. Keep them on. If you get them on using that card early, you're less likely to get vague time frames or time frames that are in between 2. And let them know, you know, I have to have one. I'm sorry, that's the software is telling me, or it says in here I have to have one. So if you could give me your best, if they're like, I don't know if it was this one or that one, I don't know. It was around a year ago. You know, was it 4 to 12 months ago, 1 or more years ago, or something else, or some other time frame? You know, I have to get one, please. And so you just ask them about problems, and then when was the last time you had any kind of help dealing with school problems? And then there's parenthetical in here that you can use or not use. Whatever's not in parenthetical should be read, you know, for validity, should be read as written. The parenthetical is here to help you if they're like, oh, like, what do you mean help for school problems? Like, what kind of help? So, you know, talking to a school counselor, talking to a tutor, attending social skills, you know, that one's pretty straightforward. But then the same thing. So you've already done 1 section. There's 8 sections. You've already done 1. Now work problems, same thing. When's the last time you had these problems? Came in late or left early from work? You know, using card Q. So keep them on card Q. That'll get you through the whole rest of the assessment. And then that's it. And then last time they had any help specific to work, employee assistance programs, talking to a counselor about problems at work. And I guess the only clarification on this is that it's got to be specific to work. We already talked about school. We're not talking about help for anything else, just work. If it's something else, we'll ask you about it later. So then you just go through physical health, sources of stress. Same. All these sources of stress, consider yourself to be homeless. Last time you had any help dealing with stress, talking to a counselor, managing stress, learning to better manage stress, you know? So it gives you some examples if you want to read them, if it's helpful. If they got a straight answer for you and they know, then you don't need to read the parenthetical if you don't think it's going to help you. Okay, so you go through each one like that, and that's really it. You know, there's a transitional statement at the beginning. Again, I would definitely read those. You know, the next questions are about common physical, behavioral, and emotional problems. These problems are considered significant when you have them for 2 or more weeks, when they keep coming back, when they keep you from meeting your responsibilities, or when they make you feel like you can't go on. So it's important that they understand that the problem is significant because this is consistent with DSM. That's why that transitional statement is in there, and that's why these questions are written as they are for validity. They're mapped to DSM. And that's why these questions some of them are long, because you got to make sure you're capturing those symptoms and making sure they understand. You know, if you need to, the mental health section is probably where the most clarifications are going to come up because the questions are long and detailed, but they have to be to get at what you're getting at. You know, it's easy to know, you know, when's the last time you went to school or when's the last time you cut school, like compared to these, it's a kind of a different ball game. The same, again, substance use, make sure they understand so you don't get yourself into a long clarification with them about usage. That we're asking about any non-medical use of prescription type drugs. Please don't include any prescription drugs you use, only as instructed by a doctor. So again, that'll get you on the straight of what you're asking them. And then just reading the questions as verbatim for validity because they're mapped to DSM and they're written that way. And then crime and violence, and then that's it. So you're only asking the client, it's 17 pages. And as you can see, most of the pages are only half a page because we keep each section on one page. Then after you tell the client that's all the questions we have for you, you document the time so that you know how long it took you on the assessment. And then you ask the client one last question, which is weird, right? Because you just told them that's all the questions we have for you. But the reason we do this is because that Z2, are there any special issues that we need to know about? Clients could go on and on about that if you let them. So we don't want that to make it look like your assessments are taking a really long time, right? So that's why that question is after you've documented that. And then again, here's a few things that this is your opinion as the clinician or as the interviewer. Or orally administered by staff. That's usually gonna be the case, right? Was it done pen and paper, computer, telephone? Pretty easy. Some other way, I don't know what other way that would be, but through the mail, I don't know, mail it to them, they mailed it back. The language, any indications of developmental disabilities. So again, these are just interviewer perceptions of the assessment in the event that some other person is reviewing your assessment, your supervisor, whoever it might be. So, yeah, where was it done? And then that's it. That's a paper copy. It's short. Yeah, and you'll be doing these 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe 25 or 30 at the beginning.
Does anyone have any questions on that? Well, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Scott, you did amazing.
Molly? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I had a question.
You're on mute.
You're not hearing you.
Happened. Sorry, I must have hit it twice. In the chat, I was asking what we're supposed to do about the term treatment in the introduction section. How are we supposed to handle that if we're asking questions as they're written?
That's a good question. I don't know what would be best. I think this is probably a group decision to all be on the same page. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I wouldn't recommend subbing out treatment for something on the fly. I think that should be something that's decided as a whole, like program or something. I'll leave that to.
Yeah, we can, if you want to shoot me an email. I did not see who asked that question, but if you want to shoot me an email, we can discuss that a little bit more internally if you wouldn't mind. What other questions? The intention of this, everybody, too, is we're not expecting you all to be in the business of diagnosing people's, disorders and whatnot. This is just, this is something that obviously we want this to work for you so that you can provide the best services for that individual while they're in your custody and while they're under your care. So, right. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Oh, sorry, Callie, go ahead.
So if I do a gain assessment, I work at JBBS in Delta, and let's say something happens and they get picked up in Teller County. Does Teller County then have to redo this gain assessment, or is it transferable to their records?
They're all transferable if you want to, but I think the consideration there is the hard question is how long have they been out? What have they been doing? Don't you want to capture that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
This comes up a lot in all kinds of different programs. Like how long is the gain good for? There's no real answer. Like,
okay.
If let's say they went to somewhere, they went straight from a jail or something and went to somewhere somewhere else inpatient and we're in there the whole time for, you know, a month, 2 weeks or a month, would you need to do another assessment? Probably not, because there's probably not a lot going on. But if they're on the street the whole time and they got arrested and like, you want to capture that. You don't want to use the old, you know, and I think that's even more relevant for this because this is so short. I know I went over a ton of information, but once you start, these are very short. And, you know, maybe I'm biased, but, you know, we do assessments that are an hour and a half or 2 hours. This is going to be like 20 minutes. once you
Okay,
do a
thank
couple.
you.
Sure. But I think the biggest point on that is it's like a case by case basis. Is it still good or like, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And again, like when I said, you know, we're not in the business of diagnosing per se, obviously you're going to want to put as much information as you can about that you already maybe know about this person. Yes, of course, we want to have all that information available and ready to us. There's information or there's places to add that in Civicor as well. So yeah, the more information, the better, obviously, and not just for us, but for you all as well.
And yeah, I think to go along with that, there's not a lot of interpretation with this assessment. You're just asking the client when last things happened. That's
Right.
one of the importance of reading them verbatim, because the questions have validity. You're asking when certain things happen, and then the software is telling you if they have a low, moderate, or high problem in those life areas. Like they self-reported the symptoms. They have a low, moderate, or high in each section if they answered the questions. Like, so there's really not a lot of interpretation in terms of that, you know, and it's giving you a jumping off point and a set of recommendations to work with, so you don't have to create those from scratch, if that helps.
Okay, I'm reading your question, Anita. So just to be clear, even if we are licensed and credentialed to formulate a diagnosis, we are not supposed to. No. So um, again, like I want you all to keep doing what you've been doing the way you've been doing it. Okay, this is literally just a different screening tool for the work that you've already been doing. So I misspoke on that. I'm sure I'm getting a lot of private messaged questions, which is a little difficult to manage all of that as well. So again, this is just another screening tool for the new fiscal year. Continue making, continue your diagnoses and whatnot as you have been. There's none of that is changing. Seeing no more question, or how will be aware if there's a gains in the system from a previous incarceration or from, I think Scott touched on that, but I think you can just look the individual up by name. Is that my understanding?
Yeah.
Is this for inmates who will be in jail at least 30 days or longer? So no, the only thing that everybody who gets enrolled in the JBBS program needs to complete this gain assessment. If you have somebody who is incarcerated for 30 or 30 plus days, the recommendation from us remains you can do the LSI if you choose to do the LSI. That is not a requirement, that is a recommendation. If an individual is sentenced to DOC or COMCOR, will the gain follow-up be done there? That would be dependent upon the individual facility, I would imagine. The gains we administer will only be viewable by our team. They aren't universally accessible. Scott, is that correct or not correct?
That's right, for confidentiality.
Okay.
But you can transfer it, or the results are all PDFs you can share like you would share any other PDF, or, you know, and that's one of the reasons why you can identify just the first name. If you want to share the results with somebody as the PDF, or, I mean, if they need the full assessment, if they need the I don't know how to say this. If they need the living assessment to live in their software access, which I don't know why they would, then you can transfer it to them. But besides that, all the assessment results and reports are just PDFs. Right? But there's not a universal lookup because that's why they're funneled by program. You know, because we could make one huge account that's just JBBS, but that wouldn't be appropriate, right?
Right. Someone is asking, so we still need to complete ROIs and make collateral requests to receive past assessment. When you're talking about retrieving past assessments, I'm not sure what Morgan, if you're able to ask that question, I'm not sure the answer to that. I'm not sure I'm understanding it correct.
Yeah, I think I had a misunderstanding because I know there was a question about if someone's released, goes to another facility, can we retrieve and transfer that information over? And the answer was yes, but now I'm hearing that the information isn't automatically transferred and we still have to reach out. So say I have a client who was transferred from the Douglas County Jail to Denver County Jail and is enrolled in JBBS, and maybe he completed a gains at Douglas County Jail. I still have to reach out to Douglas County Jail to retrieve that information.
Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for them, it's just a click of a button. So they'll click a transfer and you'll have to click a receive for it to come into your database. And then it makes a copy. It's in both. And then it's in your search. It's in both. So it just makes a copy of everything.
Okay. Thank you.
But, you know, another point though is getting connected with them to do that would have to be outside of the system though too. You can't send a request in the system to transfer me this person.
Okay, yeah, that was what I was hoping. I was so hoping that there was a button for requesting because that would be super wonderful.
But yeah, you have to do the communication outside of it. They have to click transfer, then you have to receive, you know, which would probably, depending on the correspondence, might take like 10 minutes. So it might save a little time. But again, if they've been out, I would just do a new one.
And if there is a situation where someone's transferring to another facility, you can always reach out to myself or Becky and we can like kind of connect you with that, with somebody else from that other facility and just kind of be like, hey, this person was in JBBS at Denver. They're coming here now. They're in this system. You know, we can kind of help that coordination happen on our end as well. So please don't hesitate. If and when this happens, if we need to get involved, we're happy to kind of facilitate that.
Yeah. But outside of the correspondence in the system, it's one click from them and then one click for you to receive. And then it's like you did it. It's in your search.
And then will there be somewhere in Civicor where we can record that we have done the gains within the referral? Is anything changing in Civicor with the helps now being the only required in the screening? Whoops, sorry, trying to read all these. Yeah, we're working on getting this added. We're not sure exactly how we're going to add it yet, but we're going to have that done here shortly. So I'll let you all know where you'll find the information on the helps. When can we anticipate getting our login info? Scott, that might be a question for you.
Yeah. So what was mentioned at the beginning, the data use agreement, if we have those, and we have a lot of them, I just need names and emails, and I can send you, once I have your name and email, I can send your login information like that day. It literally takes us 5 minutes to set them up.
Okay.
So it's if you have that, the next thing is that the person who's running your program needs to tell me the names and emails of who needs access, but I'm also going to email everyone, every name that I have. It might not be the right person, but I think I'll get to them and say, hey, as soon as you tell me that, I'll get you guys set up. And then if this might be a side conversation, but if it's okay with you all, I can just set folks up whenever, and then there, you know, whatever, then it's whatever, the other caveat is whatever your go live date is. You
Which
know,
we're shooting for that July 1 date. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do, for those of you that have turned in your signed data user agreements that have been signed by both parties, Chestnut and the jail, I'll reach out to each one of you, and I'll have to each program coordinator for those counties, and I will have you send me a list of everybody that will need to have access, and then I'll get that info to Scott. So again, just kind of make sure we get those user agreements done as quickly as possible for those of you that don't already have that turned in.
yeah. And if you have questions about the agreement, or if anyone does, just let me know. I can loop it to our legal team quickly, and they usually get back to me quickly, and they're pretty good about, you know, I need to change this, or usually.
The paper version of the gain is available online, but I can send that to individuals if you need me to, but it is available online.
Yeah, it's available online. So yeah, the paper materials are available online, but I think it'd be helpful too, if I send you the paper copy and the response cards, do you want to email them out? Email blast it so
Sure.
so everybody has it as attachment.
Yeah.
And then we could, I guess, in that email also include the link to the website, so they have, you know, have it and have the link. I don't know. Just want everybody to be able to have it, or like as easy as possible without having to search for it.
Okay. Anybody else with questions on this part? We have Camille with our office is going to be speaking next, and she's got to hop off at 3, so I want to make sure we give her plenty of time. So Camille, I'll go ahead and unless Scott, you have anything else?
I don't have anything else unless anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that.